Hello everybody, welcome to your channel Full Stack Developer, the channel that will boost your productivity as a full stack developer. While working in a microservices environment, you may find yourself dealing with this case, having a front end that communicates with different services. Each one has its specific communication protocol. For example, an account service using SOAP, or a billing service using REST, or other services using gRPC or GraphQL, for example. A front-end can deal with these all services, but adding a client for each communication type can be very complex, and it makes front-end bundle very heavy. That's why the pattern BFF backend for frontend was made. So instead of communicating directly with the services, you can create a backend that can deal with this for you and disempower the frontend so it can focus only in providing good user experience. The backend deals also with authentication instead of doing it on the frontend and exposing authentication token in the client side, which is the security breach. So let's create our BFF. I'm going to open the terminal and then I'm going just to use the .NET CLI to create a web API which will be called BFF. In this API I'm going to add a package which will add a framework called Duende to deal with all the routings and the security problems. So I'm going to just add the package. And here, as you see, the package was successfully added. I'm going to add a React app. So let's use the new framework Vite. And the app will be named Client App. Here I'm going to choose React and then TypeScript with Rust in the backend. Let's now install all the node modules for the app. As you see here, the installation was finished only in 20 seconds, which is great. Let's now open the project with VS Code. And here we are. So before you begin, make sure to launch your server in HTTPS. So to do this, let's just move this part here in the launch settings file and move it on top of the profiles. So the server can read this first. Let's now open a terminal and then launch the server. And here, as you see, the server was launched in HTTPS and the port is 7246. Let's go now to our authentication solution, which is OpenID 002 website called Auth0. Let's go to Chrome, and here on the website you can sign up for a new profile. For me, I have already an account, and let's go now to applications. Of course, you can use the default app, but I have already created an application called BFF, and the application exposes the client ID, the client secret, the domain. Here, as you see, is the URI of the login, and then the sign-in OIDC callback URI. Let's now go back to VS Code, and then what we are going to do is go to the program file, and then here we're gonna copy and paste some code. So let's begin for adding authentication. So after controllers here, I'm going to just copy and paste this. Here what we have done is that we added authentication called cookie, and then we have added a cookie authentication between the front end and the back end. And here I added the OpenID connection OEDC, which will use the parameters that we have in our application in Auth0 website. So here I will just import some libraries, and here we go. We have to add also authorization and the service BFF here, and in this part we are going to, first of all, I will explain everything. So let's just copy and paste some code here. Well, first of all, I add HTTP redirections, which is added by default. It's important to add use static files because we want our server to serve our front-end static files. We have to use routing and authentication. We have to use the middleware BFF and the authorization also. Here the use BFF must be between authentication and authorization. And here we have added also the BFF management endpoints, for example the endpoints that will let us log in. And in controllers we have added that all our controllers will require authorization and consider it as a BFF endpoint, and just a little middleware that will redirect any query to the index HTML if there is no route corresponding to the request. So let's now launch our project. Before we do this, let's just create a folder here called www.root, and then we are going to go to our client app. Here in the package.json we're just gonna add some commands in this script, the build. So I am going to say that I want www to be deleted and then create it again, and then we will move all the build files to the www root folder here. Let's now build the app. And here, as you can see, we have our static files in the www root folder. Let's now launch our server, and here when I click to see our application served well the React app. Let's now try to access the controllers. So as you see in the code, we have one controller which is the weather forecast, and we want only to access it on the front end. So let's go to the front in the source files in the app.js 6, and here what we're gonna say, we're gonna just copy and paste some code here. So we have a function that will load the weather forecast data, and here as you see I have added two headers, so the content type which is JSON and the XCSRF1 here to prevent cross-site forgery attacks. So let's now try to access it on the front end. Let's here open the network developer tools and then refresh this page. As you see here, the weather forecast returned 401 code which is unauthorized because we don't have the permission. Let's go now and log in to the application. So we're gonna call the BFF login URI. Of course you can choose whatever URI you want. And here we are redirected to the application, and as you see here the weather forecast responded to us with the result. So we have data, and then what we can see also, we have here a cookie authentication which will be passed to the server, and then you have also the XCRF header to prevent cross-site forgery attack. So I hope that you liked this video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next subject. Ciao.